Welcome to Life on the Big Rock. Enjoy weekly videos from the Big Island, Hawaii. Don't forget to subscribe and join in the adventures as we travel around and take in the sights and sounds. Enjoy the embrace of the warm, salty air and let the soothing relaxation set in. Experience the beauty of nature and what the Big Island has to offer. Adjust your attitude and enjoy virtual tours from the most remote islands in the world. And don't forget to always take care of this big blue rock we all call home.
Hi, I'm Samantha Coaches, and I am launching a nonprofit called Nourish, where we're bringing fresh food security to communities in need. We're hosting events like this workshop and turning backyard spaces into food islands and permaculture tree guilds, looking at setting up community gardens and working with all sorts of partners and organizations on the Big Island to increase our food self-reliance and food security. So if you're interested in being a part of it, please do get in contact. It's Samantha Coaches with Nourish.
And do you have an email or?
My email is samantha.coaches, Koches, @gmail.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
As I'm sure you all know, like Hawaiian Islands, like we're very, very, very vulnerable to any disruptions in our food supply. We import over 90% of our food, and it was 130 in Death Valley yesterday. It's not funny anymore. It's like we have this window of opportunity where we can look around the world and we can look at agroecological practices from around the world, and we can learn how to do that on our own properties, and we can meet our neighbors and we can do workshops together and we can teach each other what we know. Driving through this neighborhood, we had this running commentary: no food in that yard, no food in that yard, no food in that yard. Like, it's a food desert up here. And like everybody could put, like every neighborhood needs, like, where's the bulk order of dwarf coconut trees? Like, where's the, you know, so let's think of this on a neighborhood scale too. Like, if you are the only one that has food and nobody else does, that doesn't feel good either, right? Like, you want your neighbors to have just as much food as you do. So, okay, so here we go. Let's get started. So here's the ground. Here's a little baby fruit tree, right? And here's this, so in Spanish they call this the raíz de madre, the mother root, right? The tap root in English. And then you have these other roots of the tree. So these feeder roots that are right here, like, they're right in that same zone as this grass roots, right? So the grass is gonna like mat this all up and sort of steal all the nutrients from that layer. Does that make sense? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to not have the grass. The good news is you do not have to take the grass out. Okay, so there's the feeder roots. So then we're going to think about companion planting in a way that's going to feed the soil, right? So building the soil fertility is a really big deal. So some plants, like comfrey, we brought a comfrey today. So comfrey has a big, oops, how did I mix those up already? So comfrey has a big, wide leaf, right? Does anybody recognize the comfrey leaf, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. When this gets really big, you just cut it down. You just take all the leaves off and you just throw them on the pile for mulch, and they can get really big. These plants are just lovely. And also, it's one of these plants that sort of mines from the subsurface and then bioaccumulates that in the leaves, and then you can, when this gets big, you just cut it off and you just lay it down as mulch. So then it'll feed the tree as well. When it's flowering, it doesn't flower as much in the tropics as it does other places. The bees love it when it flowers. Okay, so vetiver, who's used vetiver or lemongrass or any of those things in their landscape? Okay, so vetiver is a plant that has a root that will go down if it can. I don't know what it does here. It'll have a root that goes down 12 feet. Okay, and then it also has a big, tall sort of countenance up here. Again, you can like lop this off and lay it down as mulch. Okay, so if you think about photosynthesis, okay, so what does that really mean? We all learned that in high school, but it's like understanding what's really going on with photosynthesis is important. So you have light making sugar, right? So you have this photo, the light part of it, synthesizing that energy through its plant body, and it's exuding things out its roots that feed things in the soil. So if every plant has 1 million root tips, and every root tip has 1 million bacteria, if I have plants that are all the way down here, and I have plants that are up here, and if I have a mint, right? So I have my mint, which is kind of a ground cover as well, and then my mint has a root that's up here. Now again, these aren't necessarily going to compete with these. These are going to feed the soil. Ginger, just going to have its little rhizome over here, right? So we have all these different things going in and around the tree, or a chili pepper bush. Let's put that one in, right? So you've got your chili pepper bush just growing here, which is going to have another set of roots. So the more different root profiles we have underground, the more we're going to have the opportunity for soil tilth or soil fertility in the ground that's going to feed a bigger variety of microorganisms in the soil. Does that make sense? Okay, so almost all the picture books just end at the ground and the trunk goes up. You don't think about what happens underground. If you have really poor soil, you can put things like sweet potatoes and daikon radish in. Like the daikon radish is a good soil buster. So you put it in, the daikon will grow. Sometimes it's so bad they don't, but it'll like bust open the soil. And if you just leave them in the soil, they'll rot right there. And that'll also feed the soil. So the other thing we're looking at in a food island is, again, so here's our little area. These guys have a lot of baby trees, and what we can do also is we can just we can plant a food island around the existing trees. Okay, so we'll just take it from there. So we have things, so here again, here's our little baby tree, right? And then here, so that we want to do, you never want to put the bark up against the trunk of the tree. It'll rot the trunk of the tree. It's a classic mistake, and you see it in the parks, and you think that's the way it's supposed to be. They'll mound up the mulch around the tree. So two bad things. It's going to rot the tree. Around here, it'll be a place for ants. And then when it rains, the rain runs off it. So what you want to do instead is you want to always spread the mulch out, right? So here's your tree, and then you want to always leave a little gap, and then we're going to mulch it out from there. I like to go like a full 6 feet out from the tree. Okay. When you sheet mulch it, we're gonna block out the sun from ever having contact with the grass again, and all the grass will decompose under the compost and under the mulch. So then I add my cardboard. Usually I have my tree planted first, right? So I got my tree in here. Then I'm gonna add cardboard all around the tree. And then I'm gonna put my mulch on top. And then at some point, I'm going to decide when I want to plant my companion plants. The most important thing is when you do put your plant in the ground, it has to be in the soil. It can't be up in this mulch layer, right? Does that make sense?
What are you using for your mulch in that mulch layer?
It depends what I have on hand. So again, it's ingredients, not a recipe. So like at my house, I have a bunch of Christmas berry all along the fence, and there's always leaves and mulch and little bits of soil, and I have a huge monkey pod tree that just drops tons of leaves at a certain time of year. We also mow our lawn, and so I have dried grass clippings, and I also make my own compost, so I have varying stages of compost going on. You can buy wood chips, you can buy soil, they have a different kind of mulch here. Coconut coir is really good, but it's expensive. So if you can find a source for that, that's an excellent thing to put in this soil. But the thing is, in the tropics, the soil fertility disappears really quickly. Like, it's hot. All those microorganisms are eating away. And so you have to think about how are you going to continually figure out how to get fertility into your cycle. And part of it is having plants that actually are what we call living manure or green manure that are actually feeding the soil as it goes.
Like sun hemp?
Sun hemp is an interesting one. Yeah, sun hemp crotalaria is really good. It's a pretty hardy one. You know, once it gets established, it's not going anywhere, but the vetiver is true for that too, right?
Right.
So it kind of depends on what you need in your system. There's a little bit more refinement that we can talk about as we work along today. The other thing is you want to do things like fix nitrogen in your soil. So there's a certain category of plants, they're almost all leguminous. They're pea-type plants, that they have this rhizobial symbiotic relationship with the bacteria that helps it to, like, the plant to get the nitrogen into the soil. Okay, it's a whole, you can just read about it online if you want to know the science of it. But nitrogen is water soluble. So when it rains, you're going to wash the nitrogen out of your soil, so you'll have to keep adding nitrogen. It's one of the biggest external inputs in a lot of gardens is buying nitrogen. If you have a nitrogen source, like a neighbor that has cows, right? Like Michael has a neighbor that has cows. So they have a biodigester like you guys do, and there's lots of ways to think about getting nitrogen in the soil. In other parts of the world, a little bit, a thing to also pay attention to is if you have like self-seeding flowers in your system that you're going to attract the honeybees or the pollinators to the system, if you know when your tree flowers, if you can be this careful, plant flowers in the understory that bloom before the tree does, and then the bees have the habit of coming to that tree. Now in the Pacific Northwest, like when the apple blossoms, I know when the apples are going to bloom. So I'm putting stuff in my understory that are going to be blooming 3 and 4 weeks before that, right? So we have, there's the cherries and raspberries and blueberries and apples and peaches and, and then the pears like in the fall. You have all these different things that are going to bloom at different times of year. So that's a little bit more specific, but if you can learn how to do that. But what I do instead is I just plant flowers everywhere. And if your herbs go to flower, the bees will love it, right? And so you want to think about these different systems. If you have if you're in a super sunny spot and you're in a really windy spot, you're going to want to plant your bananas on the wind side and on the sun side. And, you can eventually take the bananas out and just use them. As soon as they fruit, you're going to mulch them anyway. But the bananas are a really good thing to put in your guild to protect them from getting too much sun. They can also be used as a whole wind block. So we did that with the people that had all the dying trees. We planted the tree, and then, so from the overhead view, so here was the tree in the middle, right? And then I planted like a whole smile of vetiver from the windy side. The wind's going to come from it. And then behind that, we planted a bunch of bananas, right? And so, and then you can do more than that, but that's what we did just at let's just get something started that's going to get you going. And then, of course, and then right in here, and then we also put up a fence, and you probably have seen your friends do this, and you put it in with rebar or with your posts, and then you can put weed cloth on that. Have you seen people do that? And so they can protect it from the wind on that side. And then right on the inside, now you can plant your other more tender things that are going to be in your food island that you're going to like. One of the things you'll find when I'm sure you guys have all seen this, you take your pot from the nursery or from a friend, and it's all root bound. Yeah. And so the plant often, not always, but often will continue to grow in a circle and just eat the soil that's right there, and the roots won't branch out. And so you have to really, carefully, sometimes, it depends on the plant. With vetiver, I'm just yanking it apart. But with some plants, I'm going to gently pull the roots out and straighten them out. And even if I break off a bunch of them, it doesn't matter. It's way more important that the roots are not still growing in a circle. If you plant it too small, the roots won't necessarily penetrate it, and it depends on what's going on with the soil itself, right? But if you have super hard packed soil and then you put potting soil in a thing like this, the roots will just stay right there. And so there's kind of a compromise in there to what the tree needs. And so what I like to do sometimes if I have a pickaxe, I'll dig my hole and then I'll sort of do a sideways kind of pick into the thing so that there's a place for the roots to get going. Okay, any questions? Or should we just get to work? Okay, so can you all see that it's that a branch ripped here and it just ripped all the way along, right? And the bark hasn't grown back over this. So yeah, it's struggling along, but that is just not, it's not gonna make it, right? There are ways to protect this, but it's pretty hard when it's that big of a wound. This is also sticking up out of the ground, right? So all these, here's the feet, see the feeder roots?
Oh,
There they are. And so what we want to do in this one, if that's as deep as you could possibly get it, let's pull the rocks back and get the soil up to here, and then we'll do the same thing. Okay, does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, this is a really, you see this a lot. People will take their like little, even their veggie plants, and they'll leave them an inch sticking out of the soil, and they just dry out and die. You know, but I feel like because this wound is so big, I just don't think it's gonna make it. I agree with that.
I haven't even seen the back of my lawn.
What we could do is just take a minute and just sort of knock all the soil off this, and we could at least use that in the thing. So if someone can just do that, just bump, maybe bounce it up and down.
Oh, that's nice. It helps.
There you go.
Oh, that's great.
But you can see that they grew in circle, like they're all dead on top because it was sticking out.
Sort of cannibalized itself,
right?
Exactly.
So anyway, there you go. There's these roots that were growing in big circles. There, look at that one.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just, and that's still in a circle. Right. So this is what often when the trees are older at the nursery. So like, see how it doesn't even want to not grow in a circle.
I've been thinking about it.
Right there. There's that big root. Right. Okay, so there's lots of different varieties of sweet potatoes, right? What a lot of people don't know is that the greens are super nutritious. They're really high in iron. So you can harvest the greens and I would boil them for like 4 minutes or steam them. Some things you want to make sure they're cooked all the way through. And then you can even drink the liquid if you want. If you're low in iron, this is a great plant. If you know someone that's got a baby and they're nursing, this is an awesome plant, right? So like if you're pregnant and you're anemic, this is really good for nursing moms. It doesn't matter how long the vine gets, you're only going to get a potato from where the stem goes in the ground. They're not going to just root themselves and grow more potatoes. And so with these, you know, you can just break it off, and it's already broken there, right? So what I do usually is I strip off the lower leaves because I just reprogrammed this to grow roots instead of shoots.
Like tomatoes.
Like tomato, like almost everything, right? So what you could do is just take these and stick them in a glass of water, and they would root within a week or even a few days. They'll start to root. Sweet potatoes are so easy to grow, right? This is just so easy to grow. So then once these are rooted, you can stick them in your soil and they're going to grow sweet potatoes. Again, it doesn't matter if it's a mile-long vine, you're still only going to get potatoes from where you plant them, right? Ginger is really easy to grow. It's also a 9-month crop. It's in the same family, it's the Zinzeraceae family, I think. And so the turmeric, ginger, and cardamom are all in the same family. So when I plant it, I think about like the hand of the gingers, like a shaka. So I want to plant them at least that 2 shakas apart, right? So that whole shaka can grow and that whole shaka can grow. So this is a great. Everybody should grow their own turmeric and ginger. To me, like this is sort of the food is medicine plant. It's the same thing. This is your food and this is your medicine. And there's several varieties of ginger. I've been planting a lot of galangal, which is the Thai ginger that you get in the Thai soups and stuff. Another really delicious one. It's just saying to me is that really the strategy for here is to just biomass and build that mulch with all the materials you can possibly find. Use the cardboard to your advantage. If someone is selling wood chips, get them if you can afford it. Otherwise, you're gonna have to learn how to chop and drop from your own property to build that biomass that's gonna feed your trees and feed your fertility and protect them. Thanks for hosting me, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you met some new people. If you have someone that you look at, you're like, I didn't meet them yet, go meet them.
And I just want to thank Jenny and all the work you're doing. Thank you for sharing it here.
This is Jenny Pell at permaculturenow.org. My email is jennypell@gmail.com, and you have permission to use this film for educational purposes.